Good afternoon, everybody. Jody Mabry along with Jim DeWitt here on DMG News with Jody, or Jim and Jody, calling it like we see it. Mr. Jim, how you doing this evening?
Doing well. Trying to stay dry here in Alabama. Raining a little bit.
You know, it's rained quite a bit here at my place today, and but you know, the air show went on at the beach. No rain at the beach. So
is that right?
Yeah. So the Blue Angels got it. First time in 2 years they've performed. It's been 2 years. Missed last year because of the Wuhan flu. I'm going to go ahead and say it. The old Chinese flu.
Yeah.
Boy, it feels good to be back on the air with you, Mr. Jim.
Well, I appreciate that. It's been a while.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We got a computer running now, so we're back up and going. Man, I tell you, we've got so much to talk about. You know, I guess we can get started with the recent murder of a former Pine Forest High football player, a current Kennesaw State University Owl football player, Ladarius Clardy, who was gunned down. Let's see, what was it Today, it's been over a week ago, and they had his funeral today. 50 rounds pumped into his car at about 1:30 in the morning on Fairfield Drive. Quite a tragedy and a hard time. I actually did watch the funeral today. It was live streamed. It was heartbreaking, really was. About 60 of the Kennesaw State football players, his teammates, were brought down on charter buses along with the coaching staff. I thought that was a very classy move on the Kennesaw State coaches on their behalf and his teammates. So, but you know, Mr. Jim, it's a tragedy anytime a young person is taken away too soon like this. What's going on with our society? What's going on with people?
Well, you know, I don't want to sound like I'm dragging out a pulpit, but the fact of the matter is we have sunk in this country to an all-time low when it comes to morality and ethics. Most kids today growing up, it's not like when you and I growed up. There's so many of them the father's not in the home, he's gone, raised by a single parent. There's just a lot of problems there because they weren't being taught the basic fundamentals of doing right when they were very young. The violence doesn't surprise me because we've read about it in the book for a long time. For example, 126 people were shot in New York last weekend, and 60-something in Chicago. If you read the book very closely, you will find that's one of the signs of the second coming of Christ. In the book of Genesis, in the 6th chapter, it says that, and violence filled the land then. Well, Christ said it will be the same thing in the last days.
And it sure has. It's getting It's getting terrible, you know, and you know, this young man, I learned a lot about him today, listening to certain folks speak about him, especially a couple of different pastors that spoke, which one of them happened to be his great uncle.
Yeah.
And was a very, very interesting to listen about this young man and his family, how his family, and actually the structure is very interesting. The father actually spoke at the very end of the funeral, and it must have been extremely hard for him to do so.
I'm sure.
There's been a lot of talk around town, and I think that the majority of it is true. We've heard some things about this young man's family. But, you know, let me tell you what I learned today. I learned that his mother and father never married. But but the young man, his father is only 38 years old, so this obviously happened at a young age. His father financially supported him and his mother. His mother is a graduate of Florida A&M University.
Yeah.
And she became pregnant while attending school. And but they raised him together. There was not an absence there on his side of the coin, but I would almost guarantee you that on the side of the coin of the shooters, there's probably a broken home involved, or a home not, they didn't, there was no structure in the home.
All right.
We've heard rumors that this was over a dice game gone bad, or this was over some other form of
I don't believe that for a minute.
I don't either. Or over some other transaction of illegal sources. And, I really don't know right now if we'll ever really know the truth of what happened. But the kid had a 3.8 grade point average at Kennesaw. Graduated Pine Forest with a 3.8, but it was currently holding a 3.8 at Kennesaw. The coaching staff at Kennesaw had nothing but great things to say about him. And and you're going to get the best of someone at their funeral. People are going to, but when you've got a position coach that is fighting back tears while he's talking about his player, the young man in a 1-year period had an effect on this coach.
Yeah.
So once again, just a tragedy, and we see this, like you said, Mr. Jim. We see this throughout the country now, especially in Democratic large urban areas.
We do.
We see this.
Clear something up for me.
Sure.
Was not one of the victims Jalen Young?
Yes, it was. It was Ladarius Clardy and Jalen Young in the car together.
Okay. Did Jalen survive?
Jalen did. Jalen is, as far as I know, he's still in the hospital. But yes, he survived, and it is going to make a recovery, full recovery. Good. Yep, absolutely. Mr. Jim, you brought up the killing of a young man, a Lowndes County football player and basketball player, by the way. He played both sports and was found wrapped up in a gymnasium mat.
Yeah.
Killed, shot to death.
Yeah.
And you asked, you had mentioned that to me the other day, and I said I'd do some research on it. There's not a lot of information out there on it, but there's been quite a few murders of Lowndes County high school kids who were athletes.
And this is in Georgia we're talking about, in Valdosta.
Valdosta, Georgia. That's right. Which strikes me as odd. I mean, they're all Lowndes County, former Lowndes County athletes.
Well, my friend Gary Holland at WZEP in Defuniak Springs made me aware of this situation. Gary's from Metter, Georgia, and he made me aware of what was happening in Lowndes. And there's just something doesn't ring true here. Now, I haven't researched the situation enough or been close to it enough to really go into detail, but I'm going to do that in the coming days because something just isn't right.
Mm-hmm. There's something odd.
This is still an open case.
Yeah, that's right. It is. It's still an open case. And I think that's a great thing, great idea, Mr. Jim. We need to do that, and I think our listeners would enjoy hearing. I say enjoy hearing. Once again, it's another tragedy.
Yeah.
But it would be an interesting story to follow and see what's going on with it.
Yes, it will. But speaking of the violence and the tragedy involving the Clardy kid, it's not restricted to Pensacola or Pine Forest High School or anything like that. This is a widespread epidemic throughout the United States.
It is, and it's clearly evil. It's a buddy of mine, Tom DeFranco, used a word the other day that you just don't hear much anymore, but it's wicked. It's wickedness, and that's exactly what it is. And it's the world's full of it. It's just, they can take a life, and it just doesn't even cross their conscience what they're doing.
No, it doesn't.
And we're not talking about World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam, or Afghan War, or Iraqi War. We're talking about on the streets of our own country, young people taking other people's lives. And
I think,
boy, it's gotten bad.
Jody, that probably, and this is just one man's opinion, I would have to say that the major contributing factor to this at the level it is now in our society is because of the organization of gangs, and they are organized.
Oh, they are. They most certainly are. Most certainly are. They, they're as well organized today as the 1950s and 60s mafia probably was.
They are, and they're well heeled, so to speak. By that I mean they've got a war chest, because of the drug trade.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
and the prostitution and those kinds of things. I'm sure that many of them are involved in sex trafficking, which is reaching epidemic proportions now.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And they are. They're well connected. And you're starting to see it within the business community. You're starting to see it within law enforcement in some places.
Where you are, yeah.
And once again, and I'm kind of getting down a rabbit trail here, but I have a firm belief that our system through the years has created things to basically keep the black community at bay. And sometimes I think that even law enforcement would just assume have them gun each other down so they didn't have to worry about it. But once again, you're talking about basically genocide of a group of people, and they're doing it to themselves.
Well, they are, and that's the thing that disturbs me so much when you get militant movements like Black Lives Matter and the new Black Panthers and folks like that, and I don't hear any talk from their camps about the violence in Chicago or New York. I hear nothing about that. But every time it's a white on black or black on white shooting or tragedy, they're at the forefront screaming racism, regardless of whether it is or not. And it's like putting a Band-Aid on a cancer.
It is. I believe that these groups are put together by leftist organizations, and it's not for the betterment of black people. It's to cause issues which basically foster racism, and it doesn't do the black community. Black Lives Matter does not do the black community any good whatsoever.
It doesn't do anybody any good.
I want to encourage our listeners and anybody else that comes along our path. I watched a podcast this morning by a gentleman that was on this podcast. The guest on this podcast was Ryan Bomberger, Bomberger. He was actually on Rick and Bubba University, which is a weekly podcast that Rick Burgess and Bill Bussey do from the Rick and Bubba radio show. This young man, Ryan Bomberger, is mixed race. He's biracial. He's black and white. Black father, white mother, but was given up at birth by his mother for adoption. And because when you see him, he looks like he's a light-skinned black man, but he's named Ryan Bomberger. It's just not, but he is, he speaks about how Black Lives Matter has hijacked the civil rights movement, and what the actual civil rights movement was intended to do versus what Black Lives Matter is doing. But just a phenomenal young man, a fine Christian young man, has a wife, has 4 kids, 2 which are adopted, and he speaks a lot about abortion. And how his mother could have taken that path, but she chose not to. And just a very interesting young man. And I encourage everybody to look Ryan Baumberger up. Jim, I encourage you to go back and listen to this podcast. Very interesting and very spot on when it comes to the original civil rights movement, Martin Luther King Jr., as well as Frederick Douglass. Very interesting. That he concluded that not only would Dr. King but Frederick Douglass as well would just be furious right now at how the civil rights movement has just been made a mockery of.
Well, in my opinion, 3 things terribly wrong where African Americans have been deceived. The 3 worst things I think that ever happened to the African American movement was Jesse Jackson, Malcolm X, and the Reverend up in New York. They haven't helped the black cause at all.
You talking about the Reverend Al Sharpton?
Yeah, they fill their personal coffers, but that's all they've done.
You know, I despise using the term Reverend in front of Al Sharpton's name and Jesse Jackson's name as well. Jim, do you recall a few years back, Sharpton coming to Mobile and him refusing to speak because they hadn't raised enough money?
Yeah.
At a church. Okay. I didn't think I was dreaming that up. I was in a back and forth debate on Facebook with someone that didn't believe that happened. And this person lives in Ohio. And I said, no, it did happen because I know a journalist that was there. And they said they couldn't believe it happened because there's nothing in the media about it. Well, of course there's not. There won't be about that. But now refresh my memory on that. Didn't the church finally run him out and tell him forget it?
They did. A few years later, I had to cover an event where he spoke in Greensboro, Alabama. And it was just, I sit there in amazement because he's an excellent speaker. He's an excellent motivator. And he had that crowd in the church, which was packed, by the way, ready to do anything he said.
Absolutely. He's a very good speaker.
Yeah.
Mr. Jim, you have or had, I don't, is Reverend Abernathy still alive?
No, he passed.
He passed. You had a relationship with Reverend Abernathy.
Yes. He hails from Linden, Alabama. He passed away a few years ago, and he was, I call him Martin Luther King's second in command. A very articulate man. In fact, his nephew still operates a barber shop in Linden.
Really?
And a funeral home.
Now, in your opinion, you knew him well. What would be his thoughts on what's going on right now in this country?
I think it would be the same as Dr. King's. I think he would be appalled at what's happened and is happening in this country. And I think that he would really disagree with how the agenda of the NAACP has changed and the violence factor that's entered into all of this.
You know, Ryan Baumberger basically said the same thing today about the NAACP. He said it was an organization that he could appreciate as a young man, but through time, it has become. He said it is just full of trash. And it's progressively gotten worse in the last 5, 6, 7 years. But yeah, he spoke about the same thing.
Well, I use the term gangster. I think it's full of gangsters.
Gotcha.
And if you look at all this that's happening, like with the Clardy and Jalen Young, I guarantee you, if you dig beneath the surface, you're going to find some gang involvement here.
Yep. There are some things that lead to that. Number one, the way that this was handled, it seems to me like it was an ambush of some type. 50 rounds pumped into the car. That's not just some kids that are mad about something or something that they got caught in the crossfire. No, that was almost execution style hit as far as I'm concerned. So no, that's not just your average gunshot on the street. No, there was something there. Obviously, I agree, Mr. Jim, 100%.
But I worked with law enforcement as a consultant a few years ago, dealing with satanic occultic crimes.
Mm-hmm.
And over the years, I've seen a merger between the gangs and the occultists and the Satanists. Not so much out in the open, but very covertly. There's a merger there. You can look at some of the gang symbols, and they're the same as the satanic symbols. Mm. I'm not saying that that's the case with every gang that exists, but I'm saying there's enough of that evil, and as your friend called it, wicked influence, until we really got a problem now with law enforcement being able to stop this, because it's kind of like closing the barn door after the horse is already gone. When you had a chance to take preventative measures, when this first began surfacing, you didn't do it.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And now it's out of control.
That's exactly right, and it is. It has gone completely out of control. It's definitely out of control in the big cities, and it's getting that way around here. There's some wickedness, like as Tom DeFranco said, in these streets, and man, it's just young people taking other young people's lives for. And it's all Satan driven, Mr. Jim, whether they realize it or not. Satan is behind every bit of it.
Oh, of course he is. But see, we want to, like these brain dead Democrats, you want to defund law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? You want to disrespect law enforcement. And I go back to the George Floyd thing, and his death is a tragedy, okay? But we're going to make a hero out of a criminal?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And what puzzles me are the people that believe it. They believe it. They actually believe there's a racial problem in this country when there's really, racially speaking, we are the most unracist country in the world.
Yep.
But
see, the other part of this, and I know we're, as you said, going down a rabbit trail here, but you remember a couple of weeks ago when Deion Sanders, the coach of Jackson State, was all up in arms because nobody from a historical black college and university had been signed by the NFL. You remember?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so now he's putting together a combine strictly for players from historically black colleges and universities. Now, to me, that's racist.
Well, I see your point on it, but Mr. Jim, look back at Deion's past as a marketing genius, and I think and I'm with you. I agree. It does on the surface. It does sound racist.
Well, I look back at his past as a thug.
I got you. I'm with you. I'm with you. He, some folks seem to think all he's trying to do is just promote the SWAC and promote Jackson State and promote his program. But you're right though. There could be some ulterior motives there, no doubt.
Oh yeah, yeah,
no doubt.
And it's just keeping some controversy stirred up.
And that's true.
Something that will inflame.
That's true.
The black community.
Yes, sir.
And that's what they're doing. I mean, but back to Clardy and Jalen Young. I don't know at this point. You might, whether or not they were involved in gangs, but something was going on for someone to fire 50 rounds in there.
Yeah, it wasn't an accident. That was a planned hit. It's to me it's plain as day.
Yeah, it was a planned hit.
And but I tell you what a tragedy and just a horrible thing. Horrible thing. But well, Mr. Jim, tell me about what's going on up your way. Anything special up in Monroe County?
Not really. Monroe County High School is looking for a head football coach. They were close to signing Andrew Williams, but he turned them down and took the head job up in Danville, Alabama. But they're searching for a coach. And that's about it, really. The teams here in Alabama working in the weight room and playing 7-on-7s, that kind of thing.
Not a good time of the year to be looking for a head football coach.
Well, it's not, but Monroe County has gotten a reputation of a graveyard for coaches. Yeah. A program that was once pretty good, all of a sudden is not anymore.
Sad.
Well, it's been that way for the last few years.
That's a sad situation.
It is now.
Your good friend, former head coach there at Monroe County, Artie Davis, is now the athletic director at Pine Forest.
Is he really?
Yep. He goes out. He's actually retiring in May. So, yep, sure is.
He retired?
He's retiring this next May.
Well, maybe I can get some comp tickets for this season.
I think we can work that out for you. we can handle that through old Ronnie Douglas as well. So he'll be back as their head coach this year. So
I always liked Artie. I thought he had a lot of class.
Artie's a good guy. He sure is. Sure is. Yeah, nothing going on around here. The same thing. It's 7-on-7 season. Not real sure. I tell you who's been tearing up 7-on-7 tournaments. As a matter of fact, they just won one over in Mobile, defeated St. Paul's out of Mobile in the championship, and that's Booker T. Washington from here in Pensacola.
Is that right?
Yeah, I don't think they have lost. I think they've won every 7-on-7 tournament they've been in this summer. I want to say they've won 5 tournaments already.
Well, they had a big 7-on-7 at University of West Alabama, and tiny, and I mean tiny, the Escambia Academy won it all.
Wow. I'm going to tell you, well, they usually have a pretty good program there at Escambia County. Coach Fountain.
They do.
Oh, Coach Fountain does a good job with them up there.
He does. He does do a good job.
Jim, who do you see coming out of that tough air? I mean, I know the 4A up there is just brutal.
It is.
Who do you see coming out of that this year, out of that region in 4A?
UMS Wright.
UMS Wright this year. They struggled a little bit last year.
They did.
But
let me correct myself. They've moved up to 5A. I'm sorry.
That's right. They have, haven't they?
Yeah, they moved to 5A. 4A. I think Andalusia has a pretty good football team. They could challenge some folks very easily. In 3A, I think you have to look at T.R. Miller. They've got just about everybody coming back. In 2A, probably Clark County
Clark County, 2A.
And and in 1A, either Sweetwater or Linden. Pick your poison.
No, thank you. Hey, I feel like calling Bennett and telling him, hey, forget the syrup makers. Bring Linden down here and let them come play you.
Linden to play you.
Or Sweetwater, who cares? Either one.
It sure will.
I'd love to see Linden come down here and play them.
And Linden's a pretty good ball club now, I'm gonna tell you.
Yep. Now, how do you think, Andrew? How do you think that will work out at Danville?
I don't know. I know very little about Danville. I know Andrew's a darn good coach, but he never had a shot at W.S. Neal. And we go right back to when we talk about this. We go right back to the old Pace Milton days when Pace had 15 starters one year on their team that should have been playing for Milton. Well, the same thing is true with T.R. Miller and Neal.
That's it.
Miller's got 15, 16, 20 starters that should be playing at Neal.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's a no-win situation.
That's it. Yeah, there it is. And I'm going to tell you now, he gave them all they wanted there for a while.
Well, he beat them the first year.
That's right. Sure did.
And he lost to them last year 7-6.
Ooh, I didn't realize it was that close.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Well, it's hard to talk about Andrew Williams in the state of Alabama and not bringing up Willie Spears.
Willie is on ESPN.
He is on ESPN. I think he's on there once a week.
Yeah.
Yeah, he sure is. But as far as I know now, he is still the head football coach at Valiant Cross Academy there in Montgomery.
Really?
Yeah, and he if I'm not mistaken, he's also an assistant principal.
Yeah.
If I remember.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and say this, and if it makes somebody mad out there, who cares? I like Willie Spears.
I do too. I'm with you.
I really like him. I think he was victimized by Malcolm Thomas, Escambia County Superintendent of Education. I think the things that happened after he was terminated prove I'm right. Because he had brought some discipline to Escambia High School in Pensacola that they hadn't had in a while.
Yep.
And now they don't have it anymore.
That's exactly right. Mr. Jim, John Thielen and myself attended the school board meeting the night that they officially fired him.
Yeah.
The reaction, I would imagine that every player on that team was present that night. They were all there.
Yeah.
The reaction from those boys, black and white now.
Yeah.
When the word came down that he was officially fired, the reaction from those players was heartbreaking to watch it.
Yeah.
They loved him. They absolutely loved him. And he's doing something right when that's the case.
Yeah. And, of course, you and I heard him speak before that, and what he said really touched both of us. He's a human being, which means he's not perfect like all of us.
That's right.
But, the key to this is being able to forgive and move on.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And that's what you got to be able to do. If you can't do that, you're not gonna get it done.
That's true.
I'm going to tell you something. We're the only show where we don't care. We're going to get it done one way or another. And Because I swear I could have just heard a toilet flush in the background.
Is that right?
It must have been my imagination.
Must have been.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I don't know if our listeners care, but I'm going to tell them about it. We're planning a big road trip in the fall. We got to figure out. Sorry, Blackshire football fans, y'all may be missing Jim from the booth one night for a game because we're going to Chiefland.
Yep. You know, John Palmer, if the spring game's any indication, he's got them going. They shut out Williston 16-0.
That ain't no easy feat, and trust me, folks, when you're playing, I don't care if it's a spring game or the district final champion or for the district title, they're gonna play, and they're gonna play hard. So that's a great sign for the future of Chiefland Indian football right there.
It is. I just hope he can continue it.
Well,
because he's a legend at Fort St. Joe.
Well, he'll start getting kids. They'll start coming from Bronson and Newberry, Cross City, come over there and play for him.
Wouldn't surprise me.
They'll come over there to play for him. Yeah. And he'll go get some to come in there and play for him.
John, yeah, he will.
Where'd that kid come from? Well,
you know, with the rules like they are now in the state of Florida, he can do that.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly. And I want to give a shout out. I don't know the young man's name, but there's a walk-on football player at Arkansas that signed him an NIL deal. He gets all the free barbecue from a local restaurant up there he can eat. So good. Congratulations to him. And did you hear about Dabo Swinney's two boys?
No.
They're going to sell T-shirts.
They're going to sell T-shirts?
Yep. And on the front, it's going to have their picture.
Uh-huh.
You know how some schools are known as linebacker U or DBU or running back U or quarterback U? On the back of theirs it says holder U, since they hold on extra point and field goals. How funny is that? They'll sell them now. People will buy them just to have them. Holder U. They're at Holder U. Clemson University, Holder U.
Wow.
We've yet to I know that a couple of local athletes, we haven't heard anything out of Hunter Rayburn out of Clemson, if he's got any deals lined up. We do know that Adrian Medley contacted Mike Mincy in his real estate business to see if he was interested. Medley called him and said, "Hey, Coach, you want to sponsor me?" He goes, "I'm going to sponsor your butt. You get off his phone. Forget about all that." Adrian Medley at Central Florida.
Yeah.
But so Mike Mincy, our buddy, was having a good time with Adrian.
Yeah.
But anyway, but it's going. You and I talked a little bit about this and how it's just going to absolutely ruin college, especially college football. It's going to ruin it.
It is, and it's going to make cheating a lot easier.
Oh boy, is it ever! Is it ever?
Sure is.
Anytime you involve money, it's going to make it bad.
Yeah.
It's going to make it bad. Well, Mr. Jim, we've come up on about 45 minutes here.
Yeah.
And I think this was a good restart for us. And how about let's tell our listeners right now, why don't we plan on Wednesday evening at 6 if that's good?
Can't do it Wednesday. I have to be in Mobile, but any
okay.
other day will be
okay.
fine.
Well, why don't we do Tuesday at 6?
Okay.
What's going on in Mobile this week?
Doctor's visit.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, we'll discuss that off the air.
All right.
Okay, Mr. Jim. Well, for Jody, nope. I got to hear you do this. You got to do it for us.
For Jody Mabry, I'm Jim DeWitt saying so long, everybody.
Thanks, Jim. You there?
Yeah.